It was a cold Texas night in Willow Creek when Emily Carter, 7 months pregnant, stood trembling on the gravel driveway of a lonely truck stop. The wind pushed dust across the dim lights like a curtain. Mark Thompson, her husband, reeked of beer and rage. He shouted about betrayal Emily never committed, words slurred, eyes empty. She held her belly, whispering to the baby, promising safety she couldn't deliver. Mark yanked open the bed of his dented pickup and pulled out a thick chain. The clatter against metal sounded like a judge's gavel. "You think you can make a fool of me?" he spat, stepping close. Emily smelled gasoline, rust, and the sour bite of old sweat. She tried to step back, but her heels slid on the gravel. She begged him to stop, reminded him of their vows, their tiny crib waiting at home. He laughed. In the shadows near the pumps, a woman watched from a black car, Vanessa Miller, the woman who once called Emily sister. Her lipstick glowed under the sodium lamps. She nodded at Mark, a small, cruel nod that told Emily this night had been planned. The chain wrapped around Emily's wrists. It bit her skin like teeth. Mark looped it twice, then anchored the other end to the hitch. Emily cried out as the first tug jolted her forward. She fell to her knees. Her palms tore open on the gravel. In her belly, the baby fluttered, then kicked hard as if to wake her. "Please," she said, "I'm carrying your child." Mark's jaw tightened. "Not mine," he said, a lie Vanessa had fed him for months. He climbed into the truck. The engine growled. The taillights bled red onto the ground. The truck rolled. The chains stretched. Emily's body scraped across the stones, her dress shredded, skin ripped from her knees, her elbows, her shoulders. Hot pain flooded her bones. She bit back a scream because screaming burned air she needed to breathe. Behind the truck, she became a trail of blood and torn fabric, a human prayer dragged through dirt. The baby cramped inside her. A sharp wave seized her lower back, then another. She realized with terror that labor had started far too soon. She clawed at the chain, fingers slick with blood. Gravel shredded her fingertips until there were no lines left to read. A horn wailed from the highway. Headlights cut across the lot. A long, low limousine swung off the road, brakes crying. The driver, a tall man in a dark suit, threw open his door. He stared at the nightmare unfolding, at the truck pulling a pregnant woman like luggage. He shouted, voice steady and commanding, echoing through the cold air. Emily forced her head up. For a second their eyes met. The stranger's full of horror, hers full of a mother's last reserve. The truck lurched faster. The chain snapped taut, and the limo revved like a beast preparing to charge. Somewhere behind the pumps, Vanessa lowered her window and raised her phone to film, hoping to twist the story by morning. The wind lifted Emily's hair like torn flags. Gravel chewed deeper into her skin. Her baby kicked again, weaker this time, and a new rush of warm blood spread under her torn dress. He charged. Andrew King had been driving home from a charity dinner that night, his black limousine gliding through the quiet Texas highway. The rain had just stopped, and the world smelled like wet asphalt and loneliness. He loosened his tie, exhausted from smiling for cameras, when his driver slammed the brakes. "Sir, someone's on the road," he shouted. Andrew looked up, and his heart stopped. In the glare of the headlights, a truck dragged a woman by a chain, her body scraping against the ground like a broken doll. Her white maternity dress was no longer white. Without hesitation, Andrew shouted, "Hit the truck." His driver froze, disbelief locking him in place. "Now!" Andrew roared. The limousine surged forward, tires screaming. The two vehicles collided in an explosion of metal and light. The truck spun sideways, slamming into the guardrail. The chain snapped free, whipping into the air before slamming to the dirt. Emily lay motionless, her skin raw and bleeding. Andrew stumbled from the car, rainwater and oil splattering his shoes. He ran to her side, dropped to his knees, and pressed two shaking fingers to her neck. A pulse, faint, but there. "Stay with me," he whispered, tearing off his jacket to cover her body. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused, full of terror. "My baby," she gasped. "Please, my baby." Andrew's heart clenched. "We'll save both of you," he promised, his voice trembling but firm. Behind him, the truck driver's door burst open. Mark stumbled out, bleeding from his forehead, shouting curses. "You ruined everything," he screamed. Andrew turned, jaw set, eyes blazing. "You did that yourself," he said. Vanessa ran toward them from her car, pretending panic. "Oh my God, what happened?" she cried, clutching her phone. Her mascara ran in fake tears. Andrew ignored her. He yelled for his driver to call 911. Sirens echoed in the distance within minutes. Emily tried to move but cried out as pain shot through her abdomen. A dark red pool spread beneath her. Andrew pressed his hands gently against her stomach, whispering, "Don't give up now. Help's coming." Her lips trembled. Tell my baby, I love her." Andrew swallowed hard. "You'll tell her yourself." Paramedics arrived, cutting the chains still wrapped around her wrists. When they lifted her onto the stretcher, Andrew followed without hesitation. "I'm going with her," he said. The paramedic didn't argue. His face was pale, eyes haunted by what he'd seen. Mark lunged forward, shouting that it was an accident, but the police restrained him. Vanessa screamed his name, acting like a victim. Yet Andrew noticed her phone's red light still recording. His instincts sharpened. Something about this wasn't random. It was planned. As the ambulance doors slammed shut, Andrew sat beside Emily, holding her hand. Her fingers were cold and trembling, her breath shallow. He glanced down at her belly, then at her pale face. For a man who'd lost his wife years ago, the sight tore through every scar he'd buried. The siren wailed through the night as the ambulance sped toward the hospital. Emily's eyes fluttered again, her whisper barely a breath. "Who are you?" Andrew squeezed her hand. "Someone who won't let you die tonight." Her eyes closed, her pulse fading under his touch. The monitor beeped wildly. Andrew shouted for the medics, panic flooding his chest. Then her heart stopped. The hospital lights were blinding white, slicing through the fog of chaos that followed Emily Carter into the emergency room. Her body, pale and broken, lay motionless as doctors and nurses swarmed around her. Andrew King stood frozen in the doorway, his clothes drenched with her blood, his heartbeat pounding louder than the beeping monitors. "She's coding," a nurse shouted. The doctor pressed his hands against her chest, counting in sharp bursts. 1, 2, 3, charge! The defibrillator sparked. Emily's body jolted once, then again. Nothing. Andrew gripped the doorframe. For a man who'd already buried a wife years ago, the scene felt like a cruel repeat of fate. He stepped forward, voice cracking. "Please, save her." His words carried the weight of desperation only someone who'd lost too much could understand. The doctor didn't look up. "We're trying, sir." Then suddenly, a soft blip broke through the silence, the faint rhythm of a heartbeat. The room exhaled. Emily was alive, but barely. "She's going into premature labor," another nurse cried. They rushed her toward the delivery ward. Andrew followed until security blocked him. "Sir, you can't go in there." He nodded numbly, his hands shaking. Through the small glass window, he saw her weak body arching in pain. Doctors shouting, "We need to save the baby now." The smell of antiseptic mixed with panic. Emily drifted in and out of consciousness. In her mind, she saw flashes of the truck, the chain, Mark's angry face, the sound of her own screams swallowed by the night. She whispered her baby's name, Emma, a name she'd never told anyone. "Please, Emma, hold on," she mumbled. Outside the room, Andrew sat on a plastic chair, elbows on his knees, his head bowed. He replayed the crash, her bleeding hands, the terror in her eyes. The image carved itself into his mind. His driver, trembling, approached him. "Sir, the police are outside. They want your statement." Andrew nodded, but didn't move. His focus stayed locked on the swinging door to the delivery room. Hours felt like years. The monitors beeped steadily, then dipped, then rose again. The hallway filled with whispers, nurses passing, the metallic rattle of trays, the hum of fluorescent lights. Andrew clenched his fists. "She's not dying like my wife did," he muttered to himself. Then suddenly a sharp cry pierced the air. It was small, fragile, but alive. The doctor stepped out, sweat dripping from his brow. "We've got a baby girl," he said. Andrew stood up so fast his chair crashed behind him. "And the mother?" The doctor hesitated. "She lost a lot of blood. She's critical, but she's fighting." Andrew felt something tighten in his chest, hope mixed with fear. "I'll pay for everything, whatever she needs." The doctor nodded, grateful. As they wheeled Emily out of the delivery room, she was pale as paper, her breathing shallow. A tiny cry echoed from the incubator beside her. Andrew followed both stretchers as if protecting something sacred. Emily's eyes flickered open for a brief second. "Is she alive?" she whispered. Andrew leaned close, his voice steady. "Yes, she's alive, so now you fight too." Her lips trembled, a tear escaping down her cheek. Then her head fell to the side, monitors spiking wildly. The doctor shouted for the crash cart again. The morning light crept through the hospital blinds, soft but cruel. Andrew King hadn't slept in 30 hours. He sat beside Emily's bed, staring at the rhythm of her heartbeat on the monitor, steady, fragile, like a candle flickering in wind. The doctors had stabilized her, but her body was covered in bruises and bandages, her wrists swollen from the chain. Her baby, Emma, was in the neonatal unit, fighting for breath inside a small glass box. Every beat from that monitor echoed in Andrew's chest like a drum of guilt. He'd replayed the crash 100 times in his head. The crunch of metal, the sound of her scream, the blood pooling beneath her. He couldn't stop seeing it. He told himself he'd saved her, but it didn't feel like saving. It felt like not enough. If he'd been 1 minute later, she'd be dead. He rubbed his face with trembling hands. "You should have been faster," he muttered under his breath. A nurse entered quietly, adjusting Emily's IV. "You've been here all night, sir," she said softly. "You should rest." Andrew shook his head. "I'll rest when she opens her eyes." Down the hall, through the glass window of the NICU, he could see the baby. Tiny, frail, hooked to tubes, her chest rising and falling like fragile paper. He walked to the nursery, his shoes echoing against the tiles. The nurse inside smiled faintly. "She's a fighter," she said. "Most babies this early don't cry that strong." Andrew placed his hand on the glass. "She's got her mother's strength," he whispered. Back in Emily's room, her doctor entered, Dr. Sarah Lee, a kind-faced woman with weary eyes. "Mr. King," she said, "the police will need to question her when she wakes. The injuries, they're consistent with assault." Andrew nodded grimly. "Her husband did this? I saw him." The doctor sighed. "Then she's lucky you came when you did." Andrew didn't feel lucky. He felt haunted. He turned to the window, staring out at the parking lot where his limousine still sat, crushed at the front. His driver had gone home, but Andrew stayed. He couldn't walk away, not from this woman, not from her child. Something deep inside him, something buried since the night his wife died in a car crash, had awakened. Maybe saving Emily was a second chance he didn't know he needed. Hours later, the door creaked open. A police officer entered, tall, gray-haired, with a calm voice. "Mr. King, I'm Chief Cole," he said, extending his hand. "I need to hear what happened last night." Andrew told him everything. The truck, the chain, the other woman watching. Cole's jaw tightened. "We've already taken the husband into custody. He claims it was an accident." Andrew's eyes hardened. "That wasn't an accident. That was murder." Cole nodded slowly. "Then we'll find proof." Emily stirred slightly, her lips parting. Both men turned. Her eyelids fluttered, a faint groan escaping her throat. Andrew leaned forward instantly, hope flooding his tired face. "Emily? You're safe. Your baby's safe." Her cracked lips moved. "The baby," she whispered, voice barely there. "Is she alive?" Andrew squeezed her hand gently. "She's alive. She's waiting for you." A single tear slid down her cheek, and her heart monitor beeped faster. She tried to speak again, but her eyes rolled back. The alarm screamed through the room. Her breathing stopped once more. Months passed after the verdict. The noise of the courtroom faded into memory, replaced by quiet mornings and soft lullabies. Emily Carter's world had changed again, not through fear or violence, but through peace. The storm that once defined her life had finally broken, leaving only calm skies and the promise of new beginnings. The hospital corridor was heavy with silence when the neonatal alarms began to wail. Doctors and nurses rushed through the glass doors of the NICU, their movements sharp and precise. Andrew King stood outside, his fists clenched, watching through the window as the tiny baby Emma fought for every breath. Her chest rose unevenly beneath the wires and tubes. She was barely the size of his hands. "She's crashing," a nurse shouted. "Get the oxygen ready." The air filled with tension, the sound of machines, and the desperate rhythm of life trying not to fade. In the next room, Emily Carter lay unconscious, her skin ghostly pale, her breathing shallow. The faint pulse in her neck flickered in time with the heart monitor. Dr. Sarah Lee stood between two battles, the mother's fight for life and the newborn's struggle to exist. "We can't lose both," she whispered. "Not tonight." Andrew's heart felt like it was splitting in two. He pressed his palm against the glass, whispering to the baby inside, "You hang on, little one. Your mom's fighting too." The nurse turned and noticed him, her eyes soft but firm. "You can talk to her," she said. "They say babies can feel when someone believes in them." He nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. "Hey, Emma," he said, voice trembling. "I don't know if you can hear me, but your mom's brave. You have her strength in your blood. So breathe, sweetheart, just breathe." The monitor beeped irregularly, then suddenly steadied. The room seemed to freeze. A nurse whispered, "We've got a heartbeat." Another exhaled relief. Then, soft and shaky, came the smallest sound Andrew had ever heard, a cry. Weak, trembling, but alive. The first cry of Emma filled the room. Nurses smiled through tears, and even Dr. Lee's eyes glistened. "She made it," she said. "She's alive." Andrew leaned his forehead against the glass, tears falling silently. "That's it, baby girl," he whispered. "That's your victory song." Minutes later, Dr. Lee stepped out, pulling down her mask. "She's stable for now," she said softly. "But her mother is still critical. Her blood pressure's dropping again. If she doesn't wake soon—" She didn't finish. Andrew straightened, resolve hardening in his chest. "Then I'll stay until she does." He followed the doctor back to Emily's room. Machines hummed softly beside her bed. He sat down and took her hand gently in his. "Your daughter's alive, Emily," he said, voice breaking. "She's crying for you. Don't you dare leave her alone." For a moment, nothing happened. Then faintly, Emily's fingers twitched beneath his. He froze, holding his breath. Her eyelids fluttered, her lips parting slightly as if hearing him through the fog. A small tear rolled down her cheek. Andrew leaned closer, whispering, "That's it. Come back to her. She needs you." Outside the window, the morning sun began to rise, flooding the sterile room with soft gold. For the first time since the nightmare began, the light didn't feel cruel. It felt like a promise. But just as hope filled the room, a nurse burst in, eyes wide. "Mr. King," she said urgently, "the police need you downstairs. The husband, he's trying to escape custody." Andrew froze, realizing the nightmare wasn't over yet. Andrew King hurried down the sterile hospital corridor, the echo of his footsteps blending with the distant hum of machines. When he reached the lobby, 2 police officers were struggling to restrain Mark Thompson. His face was red with fury, his wrists in cuffs, shirt stained with dried blood. "You can't keep me here," Mark shouted, twisting violently. "She tried to kill herself. I was trying to stop her." Andrew froze. "That's a lie," he said, his voice low but sharp. Chief Cole turned to him, holding up a hand. "We're sorting it out, Mr. King. Stay back." But before Andrew could reply, the glass doors opened, and Vanessa Miller entered like a storm. Dressed in black, sunglasses hiding her eyes, she walked with the confidence of someone who had already rehearsed her role. "Mark," she cried dramatically, rushing toward him. Oh my God, what happened? I came as soon as I heard." Andrew felt the hairs on his arms rise. There it was, the performance. Vanessa clutched Mark's arm, turning to the officers. "He didn't hurt her. Emily's been unstable for months," she said in a trembling voice that was all act. "She threatened to hurt herself if Mark ever left her. Please don't ruin his life for her choices." Chief Cole narrowed his eyes. "And you are?" "Vanessa Miller," she said, wiping fake tears. "I'm Emily's best friend." Andrew stepped forward, his voice like steel. "You're the woman who watched while he dragged her. I saw you there." Vanessa's lips parted in mock shock. "That's ridiculous. I was at home." "You're mistaken." She turned to the officers. "I'm sure this man means well, but he's confused. Maybe he hit her with his car, and now he's trying to shift the blame." The words hit Andrew like ice water. He clenched his fists, but Chief Cole held up a hand again. "Easy, Mr. King. We'll check every story." Then he turned to Vanessa. "If you're her friend, you won't mind coming to the station for a statement." For the first time, Vanessa's mask slipped slightly. "Of course," she said quickly, forcing a smile. Andrew's gaze locked with hers. He saw it, fear flickering just behind her charm. He knew she was lying. But he also knew lies like hers could twist the truth before it reached the courtroom. When the officers led Mark away, Vanessa lingered, whispering to Andrew, her voice low and venomous. "You don't know what you've stepped into. You think saving her makes you a hero? You're just another man she'll ruin." Andrew leaned closer, his voice calm but dangerous. "If ruining means saving her life, I'll do it again." Vanessa smirked. "We'll see who survives this story." Then she turned and walked out, her heels echoing like a metronome of deceit. Chief Cole approached Andrew. "We'll need evidence, sir. Witnesses, videos, anything that proves your account. Without it, the husband and his friend will twist the truth." Andrew nodded slowly. "Then I'll find proof myself." As he turned back toward the elevator, exhaustion mixed with anger in his chest. Upstairs, Emily and her baby fought for life. Down here, the lies had already begun spreading like poison. The elevator doors closed, reflecting his pale face. Andrew whispered to himself, "If she wakes up, I'll make sure the world knows the truth." But when he reached her floor, her hospital bed was empty. Andrew King's heart slammed against his ribs as he rushed down the hallway toward Emily's room. The monitors were still beeping, the IV still dripping, but the bed was empty. Sheets rumpled, pillows stained with tears. A nurse stumbled in behind him, gasping. "She's gone. We just checked on her 20 minutes ago." Panic spread through the ward like wildfire. Andrew gripped the bed rail, his mind spinning. She couldn't have walked out. She can barely stand. The nurse shook her head, eyes wide. "We didn't see anyone take her. The cameras near this corridor are down because of maintenance." Chief Cole appeared moments later, phone pressed to his ear. "Lock down every exit," he barked. "No one leaves until we find her." Andrew stepped into the hallway, scanning every face, every corner. A janitor pushed a mop bucket nearby, humming softly. The tune stopped when he saw Andrew's expression. "Sir, something wrong?" Andrew's eyes narrowed. The janitor's uniform looked too new, too clean. "Have you seen a patient, young woman, dark hair, pregnant?" The man hesitated. No sir, not that I." Before he could finish, Cole's voice shouted from the other end of the hall. "There, by the service elevator." They ran. The doors were closing, and through the narrow gap, Andrew caught a glimpse of a wheelchair being pushed by someone in a nurse's uniform, face hidden by a mask. In the chair, Emily's head lolled weakly to the side. Andrew lunged forward, slamming his shoulder into the elevator door just as it shut. The impact echoed through the hallway. "Damn it!" he shouted, pounding the metal. Cole barked into his radio. "Basement level! They're heading to the parking garage!" They sprinted for the stairs. The echo of their footsteps bounced off the concrete walls. When they burst into the underground garage, the smell of gasoline and bleach filled the air. Empty stretchers, flickering lights, the hum of a generator. Then, a sound. The squeak of wheels. Andrew spotted the wheelchair near the far exit. Emily slumped motionless. The fake nurse turned, ripping off her mask. Vanessa. Her smile was cold and deliberate. "You really don't know when to quit, do you?" Andrew froze. "What are you doing? She needs help." Vanessa's tone was sharp as glass. "Help? Oh, she's had plenty. You should have just driven away that night. Now you've ruined everything." Cole stepped forward, gun drawn. "Put your hands up, Miss Miller." Vanessa laughed, holding up a small syringe. "One step closer and she won't wake up again." Andrew's pulse roared in his ears. "Vanessa, stop! Look at her. She's done nothing to you." Vanessa's voice trembled, rage hiding behind control. "She took everything. Mark's money, his attention, his guilt. But after tonight, it'll all disappear. Just another tragedy for the news." As she stepped toward Emily, a sharp noise split the air. A camera shutter. The janitor from earlier stood at the top of the ramp, holding a phone. "Got it all recorded," he said calmly. "You're done." Vanessa's face twisted in shock. "Who the hell are you?" The man lowered his phone, flashing a police badge. "Undercover. Detective Ryan Hayes." Vanessa hesitated, hand trembling, the syringe slipping from her fingers. Cole moved fast, tackling her to the ground. Andrew ran to Emily, touching her face gently. "It's okay. You're safe now." But as he looked closer, his heart dropped. Her pulse was faint, her breathing shallow. The syringe had already pierced her skin. Andrew King shouted for help as Emily's body went limp in his arms. "She's been injected," he yelled. Chief Cole barked orders into his radio, while Detective Hayes restrained Vanessa, pressing her face against the cold floor. "Get a crash team down here now." The garage filled with chaos, sirens, footsteps, shouting. Andrew knelt beside Emily, his hands shaking. Her pulse was slipping away again. "Come on, Emily," he whispered. "Don't let her win." Paramedics rushed in moments later. One of them checked her vitals. "She's fading fast. Looks like a sedative, maybe mixed with morphine." Another paramedic inserted a new IV, pushing fluids through. They lifted her onto a stretcher, oxygen mask covering her face. "We've got to move now." As they wheeled her away, Andrew followed, his heart pounding. The elevator doors closed, carrying her back toward the ICU. Cole turned to Vanessa, his face stone. "You almost killed her again. You're done, Miller." She spat blood, smirking. "You think jail scares me? Mark will fix it. He always does." Cole exchanged a look with Hayes. We'll see about that. Hours later, the hospital quieted again. Rain began to fall outside, soft and relentless. Andrew sat in the corridor outside Emily's room, head in his hands. Every muscle ached. His expensive suit was stained with blood again, her blood. Dr. Sarah Lee stepped out, exhaustion etched into her face. "She's stable?" she said softly. "You got her here in time, another few minutes, and—" She didn't finish. Andrew exhaled shakily, leaning back against the wall. "She's been through hell," he said. "All because she trusted the wrong people." Dr. Lee nodded. "She's strong, but her mind will need time to heal too. Trauma like this, it doesn't fade easily." As the doctor walked away, Andrew noticed movement at the far end of the hall. A tall man stood there in a dark coat, partially hidden by shadows. His posture was rigid, his hands buried in his pockets. Andrew frowned. The man wasn't hospital staff, he moved with too much caution. "Hey!" Andrew called out. The stranger turned slowly. His face was half lit by the fluorescent glow, revealing bruises and a split lip. "Mark, the husband." Before Andrew could react, Mark's lips curled into a grin. "You think you've saved her?" he said softly. "You've just delayed the inevitable." Andrew stood, fists clenching. "You're supposed to be in police custody." Mark shrugged. "Money buys silence, and in this town, silence is cheap." Andrew stepped closer, fury building in his chest. "If you come near her again—" Mark cut him off with a laugh. "What, you'll kill me? Then you'll be just like me." Chief Cole appeared suddenly, gun drawn. "Step away from him, Mark." Mark froze, eyes darting between them. For a second, Andrew thought he might surrender, but instead, Mark turned and bolted down the hall. Cole shouted, "Stop." They chased him, but he disappeared into the stairwell, vanishing into the storm outside. Breathing hard, Andrew returned to Emily's room. She was still unconscious, her breathing shallow but steady. He sat beside her again, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "He's still out there," he whispered, "but I'm not leaving you this time." Outside, thunder cracked over Willow Creek. Somewhere in the dark, Mark's truck engine roared to life, and a single bullet shell clattered onto the hospital floor. 3 days passed since the night of the syringe. Emily Carter finally woke beneath the soft hum of machines, her throat dry and her body weak. Her first sight was the hospital ceiling, blinding white and endless. Then she turned her head and saw Andrew King asleep in the chair beside her, his suit wrinkled, his face drawn from exhaustion. For a moment, confusion clouded her eyes. Then memory hit: chains, gravel, blood. Her heart rate spiked, the monitor beeping frantically. Andrew stirred at the noise, jumping to his feet. "Emily, hey, it's okay," he said quickly, taking her trembling hand. "You're safe, you're in the hospital." She stared at him, eyes wet and disoriented. "My baby." "Emma?" He smiled faintly. "She's alive, she's tiny, but she's fighting, just like her mom." Tears streamed down Emily's cheeks. She whispered, "I thought I lost her." Andrew shook his head gently. "You didn't. Not while I'm here." Dr. Sarah Lee entered then, relief flooding her expression. "Welcome back, sweetheart," she said softly. "You've been through more than anyone should, but you're safe now." Emily nodded weakly, but her voice trembled. "Safe? Mark, he's still out there, isn't he?" Andrew hesitated before answering. "He escaped, but the police are searching. You won't be alone again." 2 days later, when Emily was discharged, the hospital insisted she couldn't return home, not with her husband missing. Chief Cole arranged protective custody, but Andrew offered something more personal. "You'll come stay with me," he said. "My house is secure, and Emma can stay close at the hospital until she's stronger." Emily wanted to refuse, pride tugging at her, but her hands still shook when she held a spoon, and she had nowhere else to go. "Just until I can stand on my own," she whispered. Andrew's mansion sat on a hill overlooking Willow Creek, a glass and stone structure surrounded by acres of quiet land. It should have been beautiful, but as Emily stepped inside, the silence pressed heavy on her chest. The house felt cold, like a museum of grief. The faint scent of faded perfume lingered in the air. A single portrait hung in the main hallway, a woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile. "Your wife?" Emily asked softly. Andrew nodded, his voice barely above a whisper. "Rebecca, she died 3 years ago. Car accident." The pain in his eyes mirrored hers, and for a moment they didn't speak. He led her upstairs to a guest room overlooking the garden. "You'll have privacy here," he said. "There's staff if you need anything, and security cameras. No one gets close without me knowing." Emily sat on the edge of the bed, her hands clasped tightly. I don't deserve this kindness. Andrew looked at her steadily. You deserve peace and justice. As night fell, rain began tapping against the windows. Andrew stood by the doorway, watching her drift into uneasy sleep. Downstairs, he poured a glass of whiskey, staring at his reflection in the dark window. He told himself he was just protecting her. But deep down, something had shifted, a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. Then, outside beyond the gates, headlights flashed once before disappearing into the woods. Mark Thompson was watching the house. The following morning, sunlight spilled through the massive windows of Andrew King's mansion. Birds sang somewhere beyond the misty hills, but inside the house, silence lingered like an unspoken grief. Emily Carter sat at the breakfast table, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea she hadn't touched. The bruises along her wrists were fading to pale yellow, but the marks inside, those didn't heal as fast. Andrew entered quietly, sleeves rolled up, hair slightly disheveled. You didn't eat, he said gently. She forced a small smile. I'm trying. The food tastes like dust, he nodded. It's okay. Healing takes time. Her eyes flickered toward the window, where raindrops clung to the glass. I keep hearing chains in my sleep, she whispered. When I close my eyes, I see the road, the gravel cutting into my skin, and I feel him pulling me again. Her voice broke. He wanted me dead, Andrew. The man I loved wanted me gone. Andrew sat across from her, his voice low. You survived what no one should. You're stronger than you think. Emily looked down. I used to think love could fix people, but now I just want peace. Upstairs, a phone began ringing. Andrew excused himself, answering in his office. Chief Cole's voice came through the line, sharp and urgent. We found Mark's truck abandoned near the river. No sign of him, but we discovered footprints heading toward the city. Andrew's jaw tightened. He's coming for her. I can feel it. Keep her inside, Cole ordered. We'll send a patrol car to your gate. When Andrew returned to the dining room, Emily was standing by the fireplace, staring at a framed photo of Rebecca, Andrew's late wife. She looks kind, Emily said softly. She was, he replied. She believed people could change. Sometimes I wish I still believed that. Emily turned toward him, her voice faint. Maybe saving me was your way of believing again. Their eyes met for a moment, two broken souls finding fragments of light in shared darkness. Then Emily's expression changed, distant, haunted. Do you know what hurts most? She said. It's not the pain. It's remembering the moments before it all. When he used to smile at me, bring me flowers, talk about the baby. I thought I was the luckiest woman alive. Andrew listened quietly, his heart heavy. The night he chained me, she continued, I begged him to stop. I told him I loved him, and he looked at me like I was nothing. Her voice cracked, tears sliding down her face. I didn't cry for myself. I cried for our baby, because she'd grow up never knowing what love should look like. Andrew stood, walking closer. Emma will know, he said firmly, because she'll have you, and you'll show her that love isn't pain. She met his gaze, trembling but resolute. You really think I can? He nodded slowly. You already are. But before Emily could respond, a loud crash shattered the moment, the sound of breaking glass from the back of the house. Both froze. Andrew's instincts flared. He grabbed the nearest object, a fireplace poker, and moved toward the sound. Emily clutched her stomach, fear coursing through her veins. Outside, a shadow moved past the window. Andrew whispered, Stay behind me. The wind howled through the broken glass, carrying the faint echo of a man's laugh. Mark Thompson had found them. The crash of shattering glass echoed through the mansion like a thunderclap. Andrew King spun toward the sound, his heart pounding. Emily Carter gasped, her body freezing as shards of glass rained from the broken window behind the piano. The curtains fluttered wildly in the stormy wind. Andrew motioned for her to stay back. Don't move, he whispered. He crept toward the window, gripping the iron fireplace poker tight. Lightning flashed, illuminating the yard. Nothing. Only rain pounding against the marble terrace. But then, footsteps, slow, deliberate, circling the side of the house. Andrew's pulse raced. He's here, he muttered. Mark? Emily's voice trembled. He won't stop, will he? Andrew shook his head. No, but neither will I. Before he could call Chief Cole, his phone buzzed with a message. Unknown number. The text read, Check the news. Andrew's stomach twisted. He opened the link and the blood drained from his face. There it was, a photo of him and Emily together at the hospital, his hand on hers, her eyes closed. The headline screamed, "Millionaire's secret affair with married pregnant woman, husband claims betrayal drove him mad." Andrew's grip tightened around the phone. "No," he whispered. "She's setting us up." Emily looked over his shoulder, horrified. "Who would?" "Vanessa," he said flatly. "She's twisting the story, again." At that exact moment, the mansion's landline rang. Andrew picked it up, his voice sharp. "Who is this?" A familiar, mocking tone answered. Well, Andrew King, the hero of the year." Vanessa Miller's voice oozed through the line like poison. "You look good on camera, comforting another man's wife. The public loves a scandal." Andrew's jaw clenched. "You're desperate, Vanessa. The police have you on record for attempted murder." She laughed, a hollow, chilling sound. "Do they? Or do they have a frightened woman saying she tried to save her best friend from a jealous husband? Perception, darling. It's everything." Emily's face turned pale. "She's ruining my name." "That's the plan," Vanessa purred. "You're no longer a victim, sweetheart. You're the mistress. You seduced your rescuer and faked your attack for attention. The world eats stories like that." Andrew's voice darkened. "You're not getting away with this." "Oh, I already have," Vanessa said sweetly. "Turn on your television." Andrew switched on the large screen in the living room. News reporters crowded outside the hospital, where baby Emma was kept. Cameras flashed. Words scrolled across the bottom. "Authorities investigate scandal involving Andrew King and Emily Carter." Emily covered her mouth in shock. "My baby's there. They'll take her from me." Andrew turned off the TV, his expression hardening. "No one's taking her. I'll call Olivia Brown, a lawyer I trust. She'll shut this down." Vanessa's voice hissed through the line one last time. "Tick-tock, Andrew. The world loves a villain, and I just made you both one." The call disconnected. Emily trembled, collapsing onto the couch. Andrew knelt beside her, holding her close as she cried silently. Outside, rain lashed against the windows, and police sirens wailed in the distance. Andrew's phone buzzed again. Another message, this one with a photo of baby Emma's incubator. The caption read, "She's next." Andrew froze, fury and terror mixing in his chest. Vanessa wasn't done. She was going after the baby. By morning, the mansion no longer felt like a sanctuary. It felt like a prison, surrounded by flashing cameras and betrayal. Dozens of reporters crowded the iron gates, shouting questions that cut like knives. "Andrew, did you kidnap your lover?" "Emily, are you lying about your husband? Is the baby even his?" Their words echoed through the rain as microphones shoved against the bars. Inside, Emily Carter sat by the window, wrapped in a blanket, staring out with empty eyes. She hadn't slept all night. Every headline, every whisper painted her as the monster Vanessa wanted her to be. "They think I made it all up," she said softly, her voice breaking. "They think I chained myself." Andrew King paced the floor, anger boiling beneath his calm exterior. "Let them talk. Truth doesn't need approval." She turned to him, tears streaking her cheeks. "Truth doesn't matter when lies go viral." She pointed toward the TV screen, where Vanessa's face filled the news broadcast. Her crocodile tears glistened as she told her version of the story. How poor Emily had staged the whole thing for attention, how she'd begged Andrew for sympathy. Vanessa ended her interview with the perfect dagger. "I love Emily like a sister," she said dramatically, "but sometimes love isn't enough to save someone from themselves." Emily's breath caught. "She's destroying me." Andrew muted the screen. "She's buying time. We'll fight back. With evidence." Chief Cole called minutes later, his voice grim. "Vanessa's statement has the public confused. We're getting pressure from higher up. They might suspend the case until we find new proof." Andrew's tone turned sharp. "Don't you dare let her twist this." Cole sighed. "I'll do what I can, but without solid evidence, her lawyers will spin everything." When the call ended, Emily buried her face in her hands. "I should have died that night," she whispered. "At least then they'd believe I was innocent." Andrew knelt before her, lifting her chin gently. "Don't say that. You lived for Emma, for justice. Vanessa wins if you give up." His words cut through the fog for a moment, but then the phone buzzed again, a notification. Andrew hesitated before opening it. A new video had surfaced online. The caption read, "Leaked footage. Emily Carter seen kissing Millionaire in hospital hallway." The clip was blurry, but effective. It showed Emily weak in a hospital gown, Andrew supporting her as she nearly collapsed. but from the right angle it looked intimate, scandalous. The internet didn't care about context. The comments were already vicious. She's disgusting. Poor husband. Typical gold digger. Emily's sobs came in silent waves. They'll never let me be a mother now. Andrew slammed the laptop shut, his knuckles white. Enough. I'm calling Olivia Brown. We're filing an injunction today. But even as he spoke, something deeper stirred in him. A familiar rage. The same helpless fury he'd felt the night his wife died. He turned toward the window, eyes burning. Vanessa thinks she can bury the truth, he said coldly. Let's start digging it up. Emily looked at him, voice trembling. And if she finds us first? Andrew's gaze hardened, the protective calm in his voice replaced with steel. Then we stopped running. Lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating their reflections in the glass. Two people bound by pain and defiance. Outside, amid the storm and chaos, a black car idled across the street. Inside, Vanessa watched through tinted windows, a smile curling on her lips as she whispered, "Let's see how much more they can lose." And she started the engine. Rain poured down in sheets when Olivia Brown arrived at Andrew King's mansion. Her heels clicked sharply on the marble floor, matching her no-nonsense tone. "I've seen the news," she said, setting her leather briefcase on the table. "Vanessa's playing dirty, but we can beat her at her own game, if we move fast." Andrew stood by the fireplace, his arms crossed. "She's targeting Emily's reputation. The public's turning against her." Olivia nodded. "That's what sociopaths do. They rewrite reality until everyone forgets the truth. But Vanessa made one mistake. She left breadcrumbs." Emily Carter sat quietly on the sofa, wrapped in a thick cardigan. Her eyes were swollen, her voice faint. "Breadcrumbs?" Olivia opened a folder full of documents. "I've been digging through hospital records. Someone tampered with the footage from the security cameras the night you were attacked, but an IT technician made a backup file before it was erased." She slid a USB drive across the table. "We just need the court to admit it as evidence." Andrew's eyes lit with hope. That video could clear her name. "It could," Olivia said, "but we have a bigger problem. Vanessa's lawyers filed a restraining order against you both. She's claiming harassment. You're not allowed within 500 feet of her, or the hospital." Emily froze. "The hospital? But my baby, Emma, she's still there." Olivia's expression softened. "I know. I'm filing an appeal, but until then you'll have to stay away. Vanessa's claiming you're unstable, that you're planning to kidnap your own child." Emily's breath hitched, panic rising. "She's trying to take my baby from me." Andrew stepped closer, voice steady but fierce. "She won't succeed." Olivia handed Emily a sealed envelope. "Inside is a statement for the judge. Your truth, in your own words. Tell him everything. How Mark chained you, how Vanessa manipulated him, how they planned your death. I'll submit it as part of your defense." Emily opened the envelope slowly. Her hands trembled as she saw her own name printed at the top. She began to write, each word pulling pain from the deepest part of her soul. "He looked at me like I was already dead. But I lived. For my child." Tears blurred the ink. When she finished, Olivia took the letter gently. "This," she said, "will remind the court you're not a scandal. You're a survivor." As Olivia prepared to leave, thunder rolled outside. "I'll meet both of you at the courthouse Monday morning," she said firmly. "Bring the video drive. It's time the world saw the real story." After she left, the mansion fell quiet again. Andrew walked to the window, watching the storm lash against the glass. "Vanessa's not going to stop until she's destroyed everything," he murmured. Emily stood behind him, her voice fragile but certain. "Then we don't wait for her to strike again. We expose her first." Andrew turned, surprised by the steel in her tone. "You're ready to fight?" "For Emma?" she said simply. "And for every woman who's been silenced." He nodded slowly. "Then Monday, we end this." Outside, lightning illuminated the black car parked at the bottom of the hill. Inside, Vanessa sat with a smug smile, reading a message from an unknown number. It read, "The backup file won't reach court. I'll handle it tonight." She typed back one word. "Perfect." Somewhere in the dark, a figure began walking toward Andrew's mansion. That night, Emily Carter couldn't sleep. Rain tapped against the window like soft, persistent memories. She sat by the edge of the bed in Andrew King's guest room, staring at her reflection in the mirror. The bruises were fading, but her eyes still carried the shadows of the woman she used to be. she whispered to her reflection. When did love become fear? Sleep finally took her, but it wasn't rest. It was memory. She was back in her old kitchen. Morning light spilled over the counters. Mark stood by the coffee machine, shirtless, smiling. He'd made her breakfast, pancakes shaped like hearts, syrup dripping down the edges. "You're glowing," he'd said, kissing her forehead. "That baby's going to have my smile." Emily had laughed then, believing it. She remembered how his hand felt on her belly, warm and protective. They'd dreamed of names together. "Emma, if it's a girl," she'd whispered, and he'd grinned. "Emma, it is." But the laughter had faded faster than the pancakes cooled. Mark lost his job. The shouting started. He blamed her for everything: bills, stress, his failures. One night he came home drunk, accusing her of cheating. "You think I don't see the way men look at you?" he slurred. Emily had tried to calm him, but he threw a glass across the room. It shattered inches from her face. Weeks later, Vanessa entered their lives. She'd been Emily's closest friend since college. Confident, charming, the kind of woman who drew attention effortlessly. Vanessa offered Mark career advice, pretending to help him find work. Emily hadn't noticed the glances at first, or the late-night phone calls. She wanted to trust her friend. But then came the night she found Mark's phone on the couch, screen glowing with Vanessa's name. She opened the message without thinking. "She's too soft. You deserve better." Her heart had sunk, her hands trembling. When she confronted Mark, he smiled, a smile that chilled her to the bone. "You shouldn't have read that," he said softly. Then his hand met her cheek. It wasn't the first slap, it wouldn't be the last. The memory shifted. She was back in the truck, the chain biting her wrists. Vanessa's face glowed in the darkness, watching from the car, eyes filled with twisted satisfaction. "You wanted him," Vanessa had whispered through the open window. "Now you can have what's left of him." Then the engine roared, and pain became her whole world. Emily woke with a scream, drenched in sweat. Andrew burst into the room, panic flashing in his eyes. "Emily, what happened?" She clutched her chest, gasping. It was him. It was her. They'd planned it. She knew everything. Andrew sat beside her, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "It's over now," he said softly. "You're safe." Emily shook her head violently. "No, you don't understand. Vanessa didn't just want him. She wanted to destroy me. She said it. She said I'd never see my baby." Andrew frowned. "When did she say that?" "The night of the attack." Her voice trembled. "She was there before the police arrived. She whispered it while I was bleeding." Andrew's eyes darkened. "Then we have something the court doesn't. Her confession." He stood abruptly, determination replacing fear. "We'll get that on record, first thing in the morning." But outside, lightning flashed, and from the security monitor downstairs, a shadow crossed the front gate. Someone had just broken through the fence. The shrill sound of the alarm sliced through the mansion's silence. Andrew King bolted upright from his chair, his instincts sharp. The security monitors downstairs flickered. One camera was down, another showed a blurry figure slipping through the rain near the garage. "Stay upstairs," he shouted to Emily, who had just stepped into the hallway, eyes wide with fear. "I'm coming with you," she said weakly. "No," Andrew ordered, grabbing a flashlight and his phone. "Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me." The hall lights dimmed as he descended the staircase. Rain hammered against the glass walls, thunder rumbling overhead. The power flickered once, twice, then stabilized. Andrew moved toward the garage, heart pounding. He could see footprints, muddy, fresh, leading toward the service door. Suddenly, a faint click echoed. Andrew turned sharply. Nothing. Just shadows dancing from the lightning. But then he saw it. A small black device half hidden beneath the bookshelf. Camera. Not one of his. He crouched, picking it up carefully. The red recording light blinked once before dying. Someone had planted it. Recently. He turned it over in his hands and saw a small label etched on the back. VM Productions. His jaw clenched. Vanessa Miller. "Unbelievable," he muttered. "She's been spying on us." Upstairs, Emily stood by the locked door, shaking. Every sound felt amplified, the thunder, the creak of the old floorboards, her own heartbeat. Then her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number appeared. "Nice house. Smile for the camera." Terror froze her blood. She whispered, "Andrew," but her voice barely carried over the storm. Downstairs, Andrew's phone buzzed at the same time. Chief Cole's name flashed on the screen. "Andrew," the officer said, his tone grave. "We traced the signal that tampered with your security system. It's coming from inside the property." Andrew's eyes widened. "Inside?" "Yes. Someone installed remote cameras last week, probably while you were at the hospital. Vanessa's been watching your every move." Andrew's grip tightened around the device. "Then she knows everything," he muttered. He raced back upstairs, taking the steps two at a time. Emily was still by the door when he burst in, breathless. "We're bugged," he said. "Every room could have one of these." Emily's face turned pale. "She's been watching us, listening to everything?" He nodded grimly. "Including our plans for court." Emily pressed a trembling hand to her lips. Oh God, she knew about the evidence. Andrew froze. The USB. He sprinted toward his desk drawer, yanked it open, and felt his stomach drop. The folder Olivia Brown had given them, the one containing the backup video, was gone. "Someone took it," he whispered. "Tonight?" Before Emily could respond, a voice echoed through the hallway. A distorted female voice through a speaker hidden somewhere in the walls. "Did you really think you could outsmart me, Andrew?" Emily gasped. "Vanessa?" Her laughter filled the room, cold and deliberate. "I warned you. Every secret finds its way home. Enjoy your peace while it lasts." The line went dead. For a moment, there was only silence. Then Andrew's phone chimed again. Another message. A video attachment. He pressed play. The footage showed Emily and Andrew sitting close together in the living room, discussing the court evidence. Vanessa's voice narrated over it. Two liars, rehearsing their story. Emily's face went white. "She's turning everything against us." Andrew's jaw set like iron. "Not this time. We'll find every camera, every file, every trace she left." He smashed the hidden device against the wall, the lens shattering like glass. But even as he did, the power went out completely, plunging the house into darkness. And from somewhere in the black, a woman's laugh echoed once more. The mansion was swallowed by darkness. Only the soft crackle of thunder and the sound of Emily's frightened breathing filled the air. Andrew King moved carefully, flashlight cutting through the black. "Stay close to me," he whispered. The beam illuminated the broken camera pieces scattered on the floor. He kicked them aside, jaw tight. "She's losing control," he muttered. "She's getting reckless." Down in the city, inside a sleek penthouse overlooking Willow Creek, Vanessa Miller's hands trembled as she scrolled through her phone. The power blackout at Andrew's mansion wasn't part of her plan. "Come on," she hissed at the screen. "Where's the feed?" But all the cameras had gone offline. No video, no audio. The silence taunted her. Her laptop pinged. A message appeared. "They found the hidden devices, your cover's blown." Vanessa's heart skipped. She slammed the laptop shut, pacing across the room in her silk robe. No, not yet. He's not supposed to know." She grabbed her phone and dialed furiously. "Mark, answer the damn phone." No response. She threw the device across the couch, shaking. For the first time, Vanessa wasn't in control. Her reflection stared back from the mirror. Perfect makeup, flawless hair, but her eyes were wild. "You're still winning," she told herself. "You always win." But doubt whispered louder than her words. Back at the mansion, Andrew found the circuit breaker in the basement and flipped the main switch. The lights flickered back on, flooding the house with sterile brightness. Emily stood at the top of the stairs, gripping the railing for balance. Her face was pale, but her eyes burned with determination. "We can't stay here," she said. "She knows everything." Andrew nodded grimly. "You're right. But before we go, I need to get the hard drives from the security system. If Vanessa had eyes in this house, maybe we can trace where the signal came from." While Andrew worked, Emily packed a few essentials. A blanket, the baby's photo from the hospital, and the letter Olivia Brown had her write. When she looked at her reflection in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. She was thinner, paler, but stronger. Suddenly, Andrew called out from downstairs. "Emily, I found something." She rushed to him. He pointed at a hidden compartment behind the server cabinet. Inside, wrapped in a piece of velvet cloth, was a small flash drive. A tag was taped to it with Vanessa's handwriting, "For insurance." Andrew's eyes narrowed. "What the hell?" He plugged it into his laptop. The screen flickered to life. A video began to play, grainy, shaky, clearly recorded from a secret camera. It showed Vanessa and Mark arguing. "You said you'd take care of her," Mark shouted. Vanessa's voice snapped back, venomous. "I told you to make it look like an accident, but you couldn't even handle that." Andrew and Emily stared in shock. Proof? The confession they needed. Andrew whispered, "We have her." At that exact moment, Vanessa's laptop back in the penthouse pinged again, an alert from her system. Her own secret file had been accessed remotely. Her eyes widened in terror. No, they found it. She grabbed her car keys, hands trembling. Rain slammed against her windshield as she sped through the city streets. Her phone buzzed with a new message from an unknown number. "They know. It's over." Vanessa's breath quickened. "Not yet," she whispered. "Not until I end this myself." She pressed harder on the gas, lightning slicing across the sky. Back at the mansion, Emily turned toward Andrew. "What do we do now?" He looked at the video again, the evidence of betrayal frozen on the screen. "We take this to Cole first thing tomorrow," he said. But before Emily could respond, the front door creaked open. A shadow stepped inside, dripping rain onto the marble floor. The echo of footsteps on marble froze both Andrew King and Emily Carter in place. The shadow by the door solidified into a familiar figure. Chief Cole, drenched from the storm, his badge gleaming faintly under the foyer light. "Easy," he said, raising a hand. "It's me." Emily exhaled, collapsing against the wall in relief. "You nearly gave me a heart attack." Cole stepped forward, shaking off his raincoat. "I came as soon as I got your message. You said you found something?" Andrew nodded, handing him the flash drive. "It's all here. Vanessa and Mark planning the attack. It's her voice, her face, everything." Cole inserted the drive into his tablet, watching the footage. As Vanessa's voice filled the air, cold, calculating, undeniable, he nodded slowly. "This is enough to open a case. I'll have warrants by morning." Emily's voice trembled. "So it's finally over?" Cole looked at her kindly but gravely. "Not over. Just beginning. The trial will be brutal, but this time, the truth is on your side." 3 days later, the courthouse in downtown Willow Creek buzzed with chaos. Reporters lined the steps, cameras flashing as police escorted Mark Thompson and Vanessa Miller inside. Vanessa wore a tailored white suit, her hair perfectly styled, her face calm but pale. Mark looked worse, unkempt, eyes hollow, his hands cuffed tight. Inside the courtroom, Emily sat beside Andrew and Olivia Brown, her lawyer. She wore a modest gray dress, her hair pulled back neatly. Despite the exhaustion in her eyes, she radiated quiet strength. Olivia leaned over. "Remember, no emotion when she speaks. The jury needs to see control, not pain." Across the aisle, Vanessa glanced back at her once friend, her lips curving into a faint, poisonous smile. Emily met her stare for the first time without flinching. The judge entered, and silence fell. "This court is now in session," he declared. Olivia rose, presenting the first piece of evidence, the recording from the hidden camera. The courtroom screens came to life with Vanessa's image. "You said you'd take care of her." Mark's voice thundered. Vanessa's voice followed, sharp and damning. "I told you to make it look like an accident." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Vanessa's confident mask cracked for the first time. She turned to her lawyer, whispering furiously. Mark glared at her. "You said no one would ever find it." Olivia pressed forward. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this was no accident. This was premeditated attempted murder." Vanessa's lawyer rose, voice dripping with arrogance. "Your Honor, my client was under duress. The recording was manipulated." Cole, sitting in the back row, interrupted. "The file was retrieved from her own encrypted drive. We verified it." The judge nodded. "Objection overruled." Emily's hands trembled beneath the table. Andrew squeezed them gently. "You're doing great," he whispered. Vanessa turned toward the jury, trying to summon tears. "I loved Emily like a sister," she began, her voice quivering with false sincerity. "But she's not who you think she is. She—" Olivia cut her off. "Save it for the next lie, Miss Miller. The world's tired of your stories." Vanessa's jaw tightened, her composure slipped for the first time. Mark slammed his fist on the table. "You used me," he shouted at her. The courtroom erupted. The judge banged his gavel. "Order! Order!" Emily stared at them. Two people who once owned her pain, now unraveling in front of the world. For the first time, she felt power return to her bones. Outside, thunder rolled again, echoing the chaos inside. The judge called for a recess, but as the jury filed out, Vanessa leaned across the table, her eyes cold and hateful. "You think this ends here?" she hissed. "You have no idea what I still have." Emily didn't look away. "Then bring it," she whispered, because for once she wasn't afraid anymore. The next morning the courtroom was packed. Journalists, families, spectators, all hungry for scandal and justice. Emily Carter walked in slowly, her steps steady despite the tremor in her hands. The whispering in the gallery grew louder. Some people still believed the lies Vanessa had spread. Others whispered words of sympathy. But Emily kept her eyes straight ahead. Andrew King walked beside her, a quiet pillar of strength. Judge Harris entered, his gavel striking sharply. Court is now back in session. Olivia Brown rose. Your Honor, the prosecution calls Emily Carter to the stand. Emily swallowed hard, glancing at Andrew before stepping forward. The bailiff swore her in, and she sat down. The courtroom seemed too big, too quiet. Olivia began softly. Mrs. Carter, can you tell the court what happened on the night of your attack? Emily took a deep breath. It started like any other night, until it didn't. Her voice shook. My husband came home angry. I didn't know why. He accused me of cheating, said I was trying to ruin him. Then he grabbed me. She paused, tears filling her eyes. He dragged me outside. I begged him to stop, but he tied me. He chained me to the back of his truck. Gasps filled the courtroom. Emily's lips trembled, but she continued. He said he'd make sure no one ever saw my face again. Then he started driving. Vanessa shifted uncomfortably at the defense table. Olivia handed Emily a photo from the police file. Do you recognize this? Emily nodded. Yes, that's the chain, the one he used. Who else was there that night? Olivia asked. Emily's eyes hardened. Vanessa Miller, my best friend. The courtroom murmured. Vanessa's jaw clenched. Objection, her lawyer barked. Speculation, Olivia turned calmly. She was seen at the scene of the crime. The victim has every right to identify her. Objection overruled, the judge said. Emily looked straight at Vanessa. She stood there watching. She smiled. She told him to finish it. I'll never forget her face. Vanessa slammed her hand on the table. Liar, she shouted. You're lying. The judge pounded his gavel. Miss Miller, you will remain silent or be removed. But Vanessa's mask had cracked completely. You think she's innocent? She spat. She was going to ruin us. Mark loved me. Enough, the judge roared. Andrew stood from his seat in the gallery. Your Honor, may I speak? After a moment's hesitation, the judge nodded. Briefly. Andrew walked to the front, handing over a small flash drive. This contains the original footage from my limousine's dash camera. The night I crashed into Mark's truck, it recorded everything. The screen lit up behind the judge. The footage played. The headlights, the chain dragging through the dirt, the horror of that night. Gasps echoed through the courtroom again as the truth unfolded on screen. Emily's body chained, the truck pulling, Vanessa's car following close behind. Andrew's voice filled the room, steady and low. That's what I saw. That's why I crashed. I wasn't saving a stranger, I was saving a life. When the video ended, silence hung heavy. Even the reporters stopped typing. Judge Harris finally spoke. The court acknowledges this as valid evidence. Emily wiped her tears. Vanessa sat frozen, her confidence drained, her lies crumbling. Olivia turned toward the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, there's your truth. Mark's head sank into his hands. Vanessa stared blankly ahead. Emily looked at Andrew through tears of gratitude. You gave me my voice back, she whispered. Andrew smiled faintly. You always had it. But as the bailiff escorted the defendants away, Vanessa suddenly stood, eyes wild. You haven't won, she screamed. You think prison scares me? I'll still destroy you. The guards restrained her as her screams echoed through the chamber. Emily closed her eyes, whispering to herself, It's over. But deep down, she knew it wasn't. Not yet. Because when she opened her eyes, Vanessa's lawyer was smiling. The courtroom was silent the following morning. A heavy tension filled the air as the jury filed back into their seats. Outside, the storm that had raged for days had finally cleared, leaving the sky washed in pale gold. But inside the courthouse, the storm was just beginning. Emily Carter sat beside Olivia Brown, her hands clasped tightly together. Andrew King sat behind her, watching, his heart pounding. Across the aisle, Mark Thompson looked hollow, while Vanessa Miller stared straight ahead, her expression unreadable. The bailiff called the court to order. All rise for the Honorable Judge Harris. Everyone stood. The judge's voice carried through the hushed chamber. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, have you reached a verdict? The foreman, an older man with kind eyes, stood. We have, Your Honor. Please hand the document to the bailiff. Emily's breath hitched as the folded paper made its slow journey to the judge. Every heartbeat felt like an eternity. The judge unfolded it, reading silently for several seconds. Then he cleared his throat. In the case of the state of Texas versus Mark Thompson and Vanessa Miller. He paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. We, the jury, find the defendants guilty. The courtroom erupted. Gasps, murmurs, a few cries of relief. Emily's hand flew to her mouth as tears spilled down her cheeks. Olivia smiled faintly, resting a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You did it, she whispered. Mark slumped forward, defeated, while Vanessa's composure finally shattered. No, this isn't real, she screamed, leaping from her chair. The bailiffs moved quickly, restraining her. I made him do it? You think he had a choice? Her voice cracked, raw and panicked. He loved me. He would have done anything I said. Mark turned toward her, eyes blazing. You ruined my life, he shouted. You promised we'd be free. Free, she spat. You were nothing but a tool. The judge banged his gavel. Order. Order. The guards pulled Vanessa back, but she kept screaming, her voice echoing like a banshee's cry. You'll regret this, Emily. You'll all regret it. Judge Harris's voice cut through the chaos. Mark Thompson, Vanessa Miller, you are hereby sentenced to 30 years in state prison for attempted murder and conspiracy. May you both reflect on the lives you've destroyed. The words hung in the air, heavy with justice. Emily wept silently as the bailiffs led them away. Mark's shoulders sagged, his steps slow and broken. Vanessa fought to the end, shouting curses until the doors slammed shut behind her. When the courtroom emptied, Emily stayed seated, her mind swirling with disbelief. Andrew approached quietly, kneeling beside her. It's over, he said softly. She turned to him, her eyes filled with relief and exhaustion. It doesn't feel real. It will, he promised. You fought for your life, and won. Chief Cole entered, tipping his hat. You've got your justice, Mrs. Carter. That's rare these days. Emily smiled faintly. Thank you, Chief, for believing me, he nodded. You earned it. Outside the courthouse, reporters gathered again, but this time their tone was different. Emily Carter, survivor, one shouted. How does it feel to have justice? Emily stopped on the courthouse steps, wind brushing her hair. She looked into the cameras, voice calm and strong. Justice doesn't erase pain, she said, but it reminds us we can rise from it. The crowd fell silent for a moment, then applause broke out, gentle at first, then louder. Andrew placed his arm around her shoulders, guiding her through the sea of cameras. Ready to go home? He asked. She nodded. Home, she repeated softly. That sounds nice. As they reached the car, thunder rumbled faintly in the distance, a last echo of the storm that had defined them. Emily looked back at the courthouse one final time, and somewhere far away, behind prison bars, Vanessa whispered, It's not over yet. 2 weeks after the verdict, the cold gray of Texas winter began to fade. The air carried the scent of fresh rain and blooming magnolias. Emily Carter stood outside the hospital doors, clutching a small bouquet of white daisies. Her palms were sweaty despite the chill. Andrew King stood beside her, his hand steady on her back. You don't have to do this today, he said gently. I do, Emily whispered. She's been waiting long enough. Inside, the sterile hallways hummed with quiet life. Nurses pushing carts, soft beeping from monitors, the faint lullaby music that played every time a newborn took its first breath. Emily's steps slowed as they neared the neonatal intensive care unit. For months, she'd seen her daughter through glass, too weak to hold her. But today was different. Today, Emma was strong enough to breathe on her own. Dr. Sarah Lee met them at the door, her smile warm. She's ready, Emily, she said. You both are. Emily's heart pounded as the nurse led her to the small incubator. There, wrapped in a pink blanket, was Emma. Tiny fingers curled, chest rising and falling gently. Tears blurred Emily's vision. Hi, baby, she whispered. Mommy's here. Doctor, Lee lifted the little girl carefully and placed her into Emily's trembling arms. For the first time, Emily felt her daughter's warmth against her chest. The baby stirred, letting out a soft sigh that melted every scar in Emily's heart. Andrew watched quietly from the doorway, emotion flickering across his usually composed face. She's perfect, he said softly. Emily smiled through tears. She's my miracle. Dr. Lee handed her a small silver bracelet engraved with a tiny heart. This was found with her when she was first admitted, she said. The nurses wanted you to have it. Emily traced the heart with her thumb. Thank you for everything. Dr. Lee nodded. You gave her a reason to fight. Now it's your turn to live. They stayed for hours. Emily sang softly to Emma, her voice cracked but full of love. The baby's tiny fingers wrapped around her mother's, and in that moment, the months of pain and humiliation faded into silence. Andrew stepped forward, crouching beside them. Mind if I take a picture? Emily laughed quietly, brushing her tears. Only if you promise not to sell it to the tabloids. He smiled. Never. The camera clicked. One photo. Emily holding Emma, sunlight spilling through the window behind them. A picture not of tragedy, but rebirth. As evening fell, they said goodbye to the hospital staff. Outside, the world felt brighter, freer. Emily stood by Andrew's car, clutching Emma close. When she grows up, Emily said, I'll tell her about that night. Not to scare her, but to remind her that strength doesn't come from being fearless. It comes from surviving. Andrew smiled. And she'll know her mother is the bravest woman I've ever met. Emily glanced up at him, their eyes meeting. You've saved me twice, Andrew. He shook his head. No, you saved yourself. I just happened to be there. As they drove away, the hospital lights faded behind them. The future finally felt possible. But in the distance, inside a dim prison cell, Vanessa sat on her cot, staring at a tattered newspaper photo of Emily and her baby. Her nails dug into the paper until it tore. Enjoy your happy ending, she whispered. It won't last. Spring arrived in Willow Creek like a long-awaited sigh of relief. The sky was clear, the air smelled of wet earth, and the flowers in Andrew King's garden had finally begun to bloom again. The mansion, once cold and haunted by silence, now echoed with the soft sound of a baby's laughter. Emily Carter walked through the grand hallway, cradling Emma in her arms. The morning light filtered through the tall windows, painting gold across the marble floor. For the first time in months, the house felt alive. Andrew stood by the piano, sleeves rolled, a cup of coffee in hand. She likes music, he said, watching as Emily hummed softly to the baby. Every time you sing, she stops crying. Emily smiled, tired but peaceful. Maybe she gets that from you. Rebecca told me you used to play every night. Andrew's expression softened at the mention of his late wife. Rebecca loved this song, he said quietly, sitting at the piano. His fingers brushed the keys, releasing a soft melody that filled the room like sunlight. Emily closed her eyes, swaying gently with Emma in her arms. When the song ended, the house fell into gentle silence. You've brought this place back to life, Andrew said. For a long time, it felt like it was waiting for something, or someone. Emily looked around the mansion. The portraits, the soft furniture, the roses blooming in the garden beyond the glass doors. It's not waiting anymore, she said. It's home now. Andrew smiled faintly, setting his coffee down. There's something I want to show you. He led her to a sunlit room near the back of the house. Inside, walls freshly painted soft white, stood a wooden crib surrounded by delicate pink curtains. Toys and picture books filled the shelves. Emily froze in the doorway, tears welling instantly. You didn't, she whispered. Andrew shrugged, his voice gentle. Emma deserves a place that's hers, a place filled with love, not fear. Emily pressed a hand to her mouth, overcome. No one's ever done something like this for me. He smiled. You've earned more than this. Emma cooed softly, reaching toward Andrew. He took her carefully, holding the tiny girl with surprising tenderness. She's got your eyes, he said. Emily laughed through tears. And your stubbornness. For a moment, it felt like the world outside didn't exist. No courtroom, no betrayal, no past. Just the three of them, stitched together by second chances. Later that afternoon, as Emily tucked Emma into her new crib, she noticed a folder on the nightstand. Inside were papers, legal documents transferring part of Andrew's estate into a trust under Emma's name. Andrew, what is this? She asked, startled. He leaned against the doorway. Security, he said simply. So no one can ever take anything from her again. Emily shook her head. You don't have to. I want to, he interrupted softly. You and Emma gave me something money couldn't. Hope. She looked at him for a long moment, her heart swelling with gratitude and something deeper she dared not name yet. Then maybe we both got a second chance, she whispered. Andrew smiled, his voice low. Maybe this time, we won't waste it. Outside, the wind carried the sound of laughter through the open windows. The mansion that once stood as a monument to grief now pulsed with warmth and life. But far away, in a gray prison cell, Vanessa Miller opened a letter addressed to her. No return name, Just one line scrawled in shaky handwriting. She took everything from us. I can still fix it. Vanessa's lips curled into a slow, dangerous smile. Mark Thompson wasn't finished after all. The night of the Willow Creek Charity Gala shimmered with elegance. Chandeliers glittered like stars above the ballroom, and the hum of violins floated through the air. Guests arrived in sleek black suits and shimmering gowns, glasses of champagne in hand. It was the town's first major event since the infamous trial, and everyone wanted to see the woman who had survived it. Emily Carter stepped from the limousine, her hand resting lightly on Andrew King's arm. Cameras flashed wildly, voices shouting her name. "Emily, over here, how does it feel to be free?" "Andrew, are you two together now?" She smiled softly but didn't answer. Her silver gown caught the light, simple yet graceful, her confidence glowing brighter than the diamonds around her neck. Andrew leaned close. "If it's too much, we can leave." Emily shook her head. "No, tonight isn't about fear, it's about hope." Inside, the ballroom buzzed with admiration. People whispered as she passed, but this time it wasn't judgment, it was respect. The mayor greeted them warmly. "Mrs. Carter, Mr. King, thank you for supporting the Victims Foundation. Your story inspired this entire event." Emily's eyes softened. If it helps even one person find the courage to leave abuse, it's worth it. Later that evening, the lights dimmed as the host took the stage. "Tonight, we honor bravery, the kind that turns pain into strength. Please welcome Emily Carter." The crowd applauded as Emily walked to the microphone. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice was steady. "A year ago, I didn't think I'd ever stand in a room like this again," she began. "I thought my story ended on a dark road, chained to a lie I believed was love." The room fell silent, every eye fixed on her. "But someone taught me that survival isn't weakness. It's proof that light always finds a way through." Her gaze found Andrew in the crowd, his eyes glistening with pride. "To anyone still trapped in silence, your voice matters. You matter. Don't wait for someone to save you. Sometimes you are your own rescue." Tears welled in the eyes of many listeners. When she finished, the applause was thunderous, raw and real. People stood to their feet, clapping until the sound filled the entire hall. Andrew rose with them, his hands coming together slowly, reverently. As the music swelled again, he joined her on stage, slipping an arm gently around her. "You were incredible," he whispered. Emily smiled through tears. "You believed in me when I couldn't." Photographers captured the moment, Emily and Andrew beneath a golden chandelier, Emma sleeping peacefully in a small carrier at Emily's side. It was the picture of redemption. After the speeches ended, they walked outside onto the balcony, the night air cool and fragrant with jasmine. Below, the city lights twinkled like scattered stars. Andrew poured 2 glasses of champagne, handing one to her. "To new beginnings," he said. Emily clinked her glass against his, "and to never being afraid again." They drank in silence for a moment, the world finally at peace. Then, somewhere beyond the glowing city, a black van rolled quietly down an empty road. Inside sat a man with hollow eyes and trembling hands. He unfolded a crumpled photograph of Emily, the edges worn from obsession. His voice was barely a whisper. "Soon, sweetheart, soon." Back at the gala, Emily smiled, unaware that danger was once again on the move. Mark Thompson had escaped. The sun beat harshly against the gray walls of the state penitentiary, its heat pressing down like punishment. Inside cell block D, Vanessa Miller sat on the edge of her narrow cot, staring at the cracks in the cement. The glamour, the charm, the control, all of it was gone. Her blonde hair hung limp, her hands rough and scarred. She had been in prison for 6 months, but it felt like a lifetime. The guards barely looked at her anymore. To them, she was just another name, another case. The inmates, however, remembered her. "The fancy one," they whispered. "The woman who made her husband drag his pregnant wife." They didn't admire her, they despised her. Vanessa used to wake up every morning with a single goal: survive and plan. But lately she'd begun to hear things, rumors, whispers through the cell bars. Someone had escaped. A man from her trial, a man who once swore he loved her. Mark Thompson. The thought of him sent a chill through her bones. Their last conversation replayed in her head like poison. "You promised we'd be together," she had told him. "You promised you'd finish it." And he had looked at her with empty eyes and said, "You used me." Now he was free, and she was trapped. She pressed her head into her hands, whispering, "You're smarter than this, Vanessa. You always land on your feet." But the lie didn't soothe her anymore. There was no audience left to manipulate, no mirrors to hide behind. That afternoon, she was summoned to the visitor's room. 2 guards escorted her down the corridor. "You've got a visitor," one muttered. "Says it's important." Vanessa frowned. No one visited her anymore. Not lawyers, not family, not even journalists. She entered the cold room, chains clinking as she sat. Across the glass sat a woman she didn't recognize at first, a young journalist with dark hair and sharp eyes. "Miss Miller," the woman said, setting a recorder on the table. "I'm doing a story about your case. The public deserves to know what really happened." Vanessa's lips curved faintly. Finally, someone who understands. The journalist tilted her head. "I don't understand. I'm here to expose you." Vanessa's smirk faltered. "Excuse me?" The journalist leaned forward. "My name's Julia Cole, Chief Cole's daughter. My father risked his career to bring you down. I'm here to make sure the world never forgets what you did." Vanessa's nails dug into the table. "You have no right." Julia cut her off. "You're right about one thing. Someone escaped. Mark Thompson. But he's not coming to save you. He's coming for revenge." For the first time, fear flickered across Vanessa's face. "You're lying." Julia's expression didn't change. "You destroyed his life too. You manipulated him into trying to kill his wife, and now he blames you." Vanessa swallowed hard, her hands trembling. "No, he wouldn't." Julia stood, gathering her notes. "He would. And when he finds you, he won't stop. Just like he didn't stop for Emily." The guards opened the door to escort Julia out, leaving Vanessa alone in her silence. That night, the prison lights dimmed and the corridors fell still. Vanessa lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Every noise made her flinch, the scrape of metal, the echo of footsteps. Then, somewhere down the hall, an alarm blared. Guards shouted. A siren wailed through the dark. Vanessa sat up, heart pounding, and through the chaos a man's voice echoed faintly, hoarse, trembling, but unmistakable. "Vanessa, it's time to finish what we started." The alarm still screamed through the corridors of the state penitentiary. Guards sprinted toward the west gate, shouting orders, keys jangling, boots thudding. But inside cell D14, the chaos sounded distant, like thunder miles away. Vanessa Miller sat frozen on her cot, her heart hammering against her ribs. The air felt heavy, suffocating. No, he can't be here," she whispered. Then came the sound, slow, dragging footsteps echoing through the corridor. "Mark?" she called out, her voice trembling. "If you're here, we can fix this. We can start over." A dark silhouette appeared at the end of the hallway. Mark Thompson looked like a ghost of himself, sunken cheeks, unshaven face, eyes hollow from months on the run. His prison uniform hung loose, stained and torn. He moved with the slow, deliberate calm of a man who had nothing left to lose. "Start over?" he said quietly, his voice rough. "You already destroyed everything." Vanessa stood, backing away until her back hit the cold wall. "You loved me once," she said quickly. "You said we'd build a life together. Remember?" Mark's laugh was empty. "I remember chaining a woman who carried my child because of you. I remember watching her bleed and scream while you smiled." His voice cracked. "You said she was lying to me. You said she deserved it." Vanessa's lips trembled. "She did. She wanted to ruin us." Mark's fist slammed into the bars, silencing her. "No, you ruined me." Guards shouted again somewhere down the corridor. A beam of light swept across the hall as the warden barked orders. But for a moment, it was just the two of them. The monster she created and the woman who thought she could control him. Mark's hand reached through the bars, gripping the edge tight. "I thought killing her would make me free. But every night, I see her face. Every scream, every drop of blood, it never stops. You told me I'd feel powerful. But I only feel dead." Vanessa tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat. "Mark, listen. If you hurt me, they'll kill you. You can't fix this with violence." He stared at her, eyes glistening with something between fury and sorrow. "I'm not here to kill you." He slipped a folded piece of paper through the bars. "I'm here to end it." Vanessa frowned, confused, then looked down at the paper. It was a letter, stained, crumpled, and addressed to Emily Carter. "I wrote this every night," Mark said, "but I could never send it. You tell her I'm sorry. You tell her I wish I'd been the man she thought I was." Before Vanessa could answer, guards flooded the hall, weapons drawn. "Freeze!" Mark didn't move. He raised his hand slowly, his voice calm. "It's over." Vanessa stared, speechless, as the guards tackled him to the ground. The letter slipped from her fingers and fluttered to the floor. Hours later, in a quiet interrogation room, Mark sat in handcuffs. Chief Cole entered, setting the crumpled letter on the table. "She'll get this," Cole said quietly. Mark nodded. "That's all I wanted." He looked up, eyes hollow but at peace. "You know, I don't blame her anymore. I blame me." Cole studied him for a long moment. "Then you finally told the truth." Mark closed his eyes, whispering, "Maybe now I can rest." Back in her cell, Vanessa picked up the torn half of the letter still clinging to the floor. The words at the bottom read, "Forgive me." She pressed it to her chest, tears spilling silently. For the first time, Vanessa Miller realized the walls around her weren't the real prison. The real prison was the guilt she could never escape. The morning sunlight poured through the glass walls of Andrew King's mansion, casting long beams of gold across the floor. Birds sang softly in the garden, and the scent of blooming jasmine drifted in with the breeze. Emily Carter stood by the window, holding baby Emma against her chest. The child's small hands reached toward the light, and for the first time in a long while, Emily smiled without fear. Downstairs, Andrew was setting the table for breakfast. Fresh fruit, warm toast, and a vase of daisies in the center. When Emily entered the room, he looked up and grinned. "You're up early." "I wanted to see the sunrise," she said, kissing Emma's forehead. "It feels different today. Lighter." Andrew nodded. "It's because you're free now." She sat across from him, her smile fading slightly. "Chief Cole called this morning. Mark's letter arrived." Andrew's expression softened. "Do you want to read it?" Emily nodded. He handed her the folded paper, worn at the edges. Her hands trembled as she opened it. The handwriting was shaky, but the words were clear. "Emily, I don't expect forgiveness. I only want you to know I see the monster I became. You didn't deserve what I did, and neither did our daughter. I hope she grows up knowing only love. If there's any justice left in this world, I hope it's in her smile." Tears streamed down Emily's cheeks. "He was lost long before he hurt me," she whispered. "But maybe he found some kind of peace." Andrew reached across the table, taking her hand gently. "You did what he couldn't. You chose to live." Emily looked up, her eyes shimmering. "And you chose to help me when you didn't have to." He smiled softly. Maybe that's what Rebecca would have wanted. She believed love wasn't about saving someone. It was about standing beside them while they saved themselves. Emily squeezed his hand. "Then thank you for standing beside me." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the past finally beginning to lift. Emma cooed softly, breaking the stillness. Emily laughed through her tears. "She sounds like she's ready for breakfast too." Andrew chuckled. "I'll make pancakes, heart-shaped ones, just like her dad used to." Emily's expression softened. "Bittersweet. Then let's make them together." Later that afternoon, the three of them walked through the garden. The air was warm, the sky endless and blue. Emily carried Emma close as Andrew pointed toward a small gazebo near the roses. "I was thinking," he said carefully, "we could make this our place, a spot for her first birthday, for quiet days, for family." Emily stopped, turning to face him. "Family?" Andrew met her eyes, a quiet smile playing on his lips. "If you'll let me be part of it." For a moment, the world held still. Then she nodded, tears glimmering in the sunlight. "You already are." He stepped closer, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Emily, I—" Before he could finish, Emma laughed, reaching toward him. Both adults burst into soft laughter, the tension melting away. They sat together on the grass, sunlight wrapping around them like a warm blanket. Emily looked at the sky, whispering, "After everything, we're still here." Andrew smiled. "That's what surviving means. It's not about what we lost, it's about what we build after." The camera of life zoomed out, the once broken woman, the millionaire who found his heart again, and the baby who symbolized hope. The storm had passed, the chains were gone, and in their place, there was only light. Because sometimes, the greatest revenge is simply living happily ever after. So, the story has come to an end. My dear friends, you're still here, aren't you? If you've stayed with me all the way until now, maybe something in Emily's journey touched your heart. Maybe it reminded you of your own fight to rise again after being broken. Like the Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius once said, the obstacle is the way. Pain, betrayal, loss, they don't define us. how we respond to them does. Emily's courage teaches us that healing isn't about forgetting the past, but about transforming it into strength. We can't always choose what happens to us, but we can always choose who we become after. So if this story moved you, take a moment, breathe, forgive, and begin again. And hey, if you believe in stories that heal and inspire, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Let's keep growing stronger, together.